Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go after the lefts, we go after the rights, we go after the middle and independents. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, June 19th, Juneteenth, 2024. Happy Juneteenth, everybody. And this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, we are a news podcast, which means we do try to hold ourselves reputable, only taking sources from award-winning journalism. We don't do sensational news like Fox News, News Media, The Blitz, The Daily Beast, whatever is your extreme left or extreme right. We simply don't follow it. We give you the facts and nothing but the facts. We do try to watch our language, but sometimes words do fly. At the same time, there be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, happy Juneteenth. You know, the holiday that's federally recognized, but yet every other state decides not to give us the day off. And at the same time, they choose to ignore us. But, you know, progress. That being said, guys, before we actually get into Juneteenth, as I usually do to educate those on Juneteenth and whatnot, there is some somber news in the world of baseball that we do need to talk about, guys. Willie Mays, unfortunately, has passed away.
There's a long drive way back in center field, way back, it is.
It would become one of baseball's most legendary moments, Game 1 of the 1954 World Series. An over-the-shoulder catch that would be immortalized in baseball history. Over his 23 seasons on the diamond, Willie Mays, the say-hey kid, went from one of the game's star players to one of its legends. 660 home runs, more than 3,000 hits, 24 All-Star appearances, 12 straight Golden Glove awards, and a World Series ring. Hall of Fame Giants broadcaster John Miller says there's a little to argue about.
At his peak, you could make a very strong case that Willie Mays was the best player there ever was.
Growing up in segregated Alabama with two athlete parents, he was a natural talent early on, signed by the Negro League team while still in high school. Despite his accolades on the field, life for a black family in the Deep South was hard.
I can only imagine the things that he saw and endured. They had the Jim Crow laws and they had the Ku Klux Klan.
Leading the Birmingham Black Barons to a World Series before getting signed to the major leagues by the New York Giants. He started strong, winning Rookie of the Year before being drafted into the Army. When Mays returned to the game, he led the Giants to a World Series victory with the catch. The Giants moved to San Francisco, where he faced racial prejudice. Mays and his wife were told they couldn't buy property in the city, a common practice to keep black families out. Mays stayed focused on the game.
Ladies and gentlemen, Willie Mays!
And finished his career back in New York with the Mets, his last game in 1973. Mays never left baseball, serving as a part-time coach, manager, and an all-around ambassador to the game.
Willie Howard Mays Jr.
In 2015, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, capping an incredible career, life, and legacy. A champion on the field, an icon off it.
What I did, I loved every moment of it.
Steve Patterson, NBC News.
Yep, definitely rest in peace, sir. Rest in power, rest in peace. Because again, Willie Mays is, and I say this, and I don't mean to be rude, but even though we did talk about 2 weeks ago that the Negro League stats are being introduced to Major League Baseball, and that some, let's just say napkins, are going to be a little bit mad. Outside of other ones, Willie Mays is probably one of the best, arguably, to play the sport of baseball. So definitely, rest well, sir. Rest well. But moving on, guys. Yes, it is Juneteenth. who knew that now in our second year, we can honestly say that Juneteenth can now be seen as a federally recognized holiday because banks are closed. At the same time, yes, we don't get the same treatment as the 4th of July, although we should, meaning that all companies should recognize this day and, be able to enjoy this day and enjoy the history behind it. But what we usually do on How the Frack We Got Here is that we always want to promote education. So for all those that don't know about Juneteenth, well, here's your lesson.
Welcome back. Today is Juneteenth, the holiday marking the day enslaved African Americans in Galveston, Texas, learned they'd been freed after the end of the Civil War and more than 2 years after Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. 2024 marks Juneteenth's 4th year as a federal holiday. And as many celebrate with parades and gatherings, NBC's Zincle Asamoah has more on how it became recognized nationally and the remarkable woman who helped make it happen.
These walls in Fort Worth, Texas may look like a Black History museum, but it's actually the home of Opal Lee.
And Miss Opal Lee, you are 97 years old, right? Many consider you the grandmother of Juneteenth. How does that title sit with you?
Hey, I don't mind titles.
For years, Lee advocated for Juneteenth to become a federal holiday, inspired by her own family's celebrations.
We'd go to the fairground for the Juneteenth celebration. There'd be music and food.
But one year, when Lee was 12, the annual celebration turned to terror.
My parents had just bought a house and my mom had it fixed up so nice. But people started gathering.
What kind of people?
All kinds.
It was a white mob.
The paper says it was 500 of them. And my dad came home with a gun and the police were there and told my dad, if you bust a cap, we'll let this mob have you. They did despicable things.
The terror did not quench her resolve. In 2016, Lee made headlines at 89 years old, pledging to walk from Fort Worth to Washington, D.C. The journey, 2.5 miles each day, to symbolize the 2.5 years Black Texans waited for the message of emancipation to reach them.
That if a little old lady in tennis shoes was walking from Fort Worth to D.C. 1,400 miles, somebody would take notice.
And they did. In 2021, the White House calling Lee, President Joe Biden making Juneteenth a federal holiday.
How did you feel?
No, I don't know how to express it. I was awed. I was thankful.
In May, Lee was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
I'm struck by how much history lives on your walls, but also in your stories. What do you ultimately want your legacy to be?
That there was an old lady who tried to get it over to everybody that we are one people.
What a remarkable woman. And we thank Zincle Asamoah for that report. And joining me now is Keith Mays, professor of Black Studies at the University of California at Santa Barbara. He's also the author of The Unteachables, Disability Rights and the Invention of Black Special Education. Professor, thank you so much for joining us.
So I had to stop it there just because it kind of goes into something else, which is fine. But yes, that's history that I didn't know as far as how Juneteenth started and the person behind it. So we always want to give that person their flowers and always recognize them every year because let's be honest, Juneteenth is basically our holiday. You don't be wrong, 4th of July is nice and all, but we still were kind of enslaved when we shouldn't have been. That's the reason why Juneteenth is important to us. So there you go. Moving right along, guys, I wanted to cover this because for the next couple of articles, this is going to explain why I am so focused on what's going on in the world right now, especially in the Ukraine. What I mean by that is that U.S. and NATO allies are trying to figure out what kind of support they're trying to give Ukraine at the upcoming summit. That alone is kind of scary because for the longest time, some NATO forces in European countries have supported Ukraine, although the U.S. has been a bigger supporter of it. At the same time, the war, for all intents and purposes, for a lot of people that don't know, yes, Russia is still invading Ukraine. At the same time, the war is still going on. So at this summit, they're trying to figure out how to still get Ukraine closer to being in NATO. The reason why is because if Ukraine is a part of NATO, then I guess the other countries have a green light to go in and support them. But they actually have to discuss it. And that's the problem that a lot of people, when they hear this type of thing, it's like why are they needing to discuss on whether or not they want to support a country that is being illegally invaded by Russia, and that you have to have a discussion on how much support you're giving to said country? It doesn't sound right. At the same time, for an American citizen who all we hear is bills of money and support going to Ukraine and Taiwan and these other in Israel, and it's just like you're going to have a hard time. And again, this goes back to President Biden. You're going to have a hard time convincing the American people that, hey, I'm trying to help you guys, but you're seeing billions of dollars go to these countries. So again, even I have to ask, like, at this point, what's the holdup? Because it's almost as if, it's almost as if they were waiting for Russia to either do it. And again, that's the thing that bothers me. Russia, Putin and company are invading this country, and yet no other European nation is moving forward to assist Ukraine outside of us. Not to that heavy extent that we've done. So I have to ask the question, is it the fact that they're wanting Russia to win, or is the fact that there's something else going on? Because again, I can't tell you off the bat that Fox News and Friends loves talking about Putin because, they couldn't stop talking about him when Trump was in love with him. But I digress. But also Biden, and again, this is things where I'm going to talk about where it's going to be a little bit iffy. But Biden just last week sat there and said he is, really strengthening the borders and actually really wearing down on asylum those, because those that don't come through the proper channels or come through the proper ports can't grant asylum, and they're now being turned away. Well, Biden today just announced a new executive action to where certain undocumented spouses and children of U.S. citizens can apply for lawful permanent residency, without leaving the country. So that means that about half a million American families and roughly 50,000 non-citizens of immigrants who's under the age of 21, who possibly is married to a U.S. citizen, could vouch for this. So this is the part I'm not understanding. And again, this is why I sit there and say, I get what Biden is trying to do, but at the same time, I'm going to ask the same question. Why are we not fixing the immigration system? I put up there with the VA system. How come that's not fixed? It is 2024. We have figured out technology has jumped through leaps and bounds. AI is everywhere. Why is it that the biggest two operating systems in the U.S., arguably, the VA system and the immigration system, are still somewhere in the late 70s? Because again, I get what Biden's trying to do, because you're stuck with those on the southern border who follow Greg Abbott and who follow DeSantis and Greg Abbott and sit there and go, well, we don't want our borders crossed. Well, I hate to break it to you, but for all these illegal immigrants that are coming across the border, who's going to do the jobs that you don't want? Because if you see Florida, when DeSantis tried to kick out all the immigrants, some construction companies closed down, and some farmers are having a little bit of difficulty getting crops. I'm just saying. But at the same time, Biden turned around and saying, if you don't come to the right port, you can't claim asylum. But now you're saying that those can now claim asylum those can actually apply for permanent residency without being deported. I'm just saying, instead of us sending the armed guard to send the National Guard and things of that nature to the border, why are we not sending immigration judges, lawyers, advocates, and actually putting in a system in place? Because it's not like America's running out of space. I'm just saying. But again, this is the things I'm talking about where you just see Biden is trying to shore up, how can I say it so nicely without being really descriptive? Biden is really shoring up the Latino vote, which again, I said it best. The biggest groups that are going to be voting this year is going to be women and minorities. So, of course, he wants to shore up the Latino vote because, believe it or not, there's actually a number of Latinos out there that will vote for Trump. In the same sense that as we go in later stories, you'll see some Black people, which I never thought would sit there and say they vote for Trump. But this is the problem that, again, this is all an election year. When it's all an election year, it just seems that, the things that should have been done beforehand now get brought to the forefront. And this, yes, can be seen as it could be seen as a political move, possibly. Could it be seen as, too little, too late? Also possibly. But again, this is the stuff that I keep on saying should have been done when you had the time and the chance and you were too busy playing peekaboo with Putin. That's all I'm saying. But guys, also just to get to Dorito for a second, because again, this is funny. You'll probably realize that Dorito basically had his RNC convention in Milwaukee. This is after he sat there and said Milwaukee is a horrible city. He then sat there and said, when it brought up to him, I didn't say that. When someone showed him the video, he goes, that was taken out of context. You said Milwaukee is a horrible city. I don't know. I'm like, you said Milwaukee is horrible. I am trying to figure out how, and he said it's a horrible city. And that's why I was like, wow, there's no way you can walk this back. And so what they actually did, which I thought was interesting, they went back to Milwaukee and asked certain citizens, how do they feel? Because as you know, Trump's not in Milwaukee right now.
Third Ward. I joined these two Milwaukeeans as they eat lunch.
Do you know who you're voting for in November? I'm undecided. I don't like either candidate. What about you?
I'm undecided too.
But undecided would not describe how these men feel about what Donald Trump recently said behind closed doors.
Donald Trump's saying that Milwaukee is a horrible city. What do you think about that? I disagree entirely. This is a great city, nice river, beautiful buildings, and nice and clean, low crime. What do you think?
I just ignore what he has to say because he says so many crazy things. There's not much value to what he has to say, I think.
The former president's comments have struck a nerve in Wisconsin's largest city, a city that will be hosting the Republican National Convention next month, a city that now has billboards posted by the Democratic National Committee calling attention to Trump's Milwaukee rhetoric. Kate Lobel also says she's undecided about her vote.
I've lived here my entire life, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else, so I guess I don't agree with that.
Does it make you angry?
No, I just feel bad because, I don't want Milwaukee to have, a bad reputation because he said that.
This woman says she's never been a fan of Trump.
I think that's an unfair statement and that he doesn't know the people of this city.
Now, what his spokesman has said is that it's been falsely characterized. He was talking about how terrible crime and voter fraud are. Now, there's no evidence of significant voter fraud anywhere, but there is crime here, although the crime rate has gone down over the last 2 years, the violent crime rate. Do you buy that explanation?
No.
This Milwaukeean, who is voting for Trump, says she thinks it was all taken out of context.
So it doesn't insult you that he said that about your city?
No, not at all.
Outside of the city, in Racine, Wisconsin, most people we talked to who were in line for Donald Trump's campaign rally had no inclination to defend Milwaukee.
I think he said exactly what he wanted to say.
What do you think about Donald Trump's comment that Milwaukee is a horrible city?
He's absolutely right. Most Democrat-run cities are horrible cities. Murder's out of control, crime out of control. We need to get things
You're right. All cities do have crime, some worse than Milwaukee and some better than Milwaukee. Do you think he should be saying that? The cities are part of America, right?
It's not anti-patriotic to tell the truth. It's patriotic to fix what's broken. I have to go. Thank you.
In the suburbs, the feelings of people we talked to about Trump's comment matched up with who they're supporting for president. Marion Cross is planning to vote for Donald Trump.
So you don't think it's a big deal?
I think it's a nothing burger.
Casey Salazar is planning to vote for President Biden and doesn't like the explanation she's hearing about Trump's comment.
He said it, and we know what he meant.
Meanwhile, on the beach in Milwaukee County, we asked this man about former President Trump's comment.
It upsets me. I wish that it wasn't said.
but it doesn't change how he feels.
Who are you voting for president in November?
I'm voting for President Trump.
So, okay, let me stop. Let me stop right here for a second. The fact that you have to go to individuals and ask them, hey, are you voting for Trump or Biden? I'm undecided. As a person that enjoys logic, the first thing I'm going to sit there and say is, what redeeming qualities about Trump will make you consider voting for him? Because as you've seen, there are some folks that's like, oh, well, you know, he didn't say anything wrong. It's a horrible city, or, you know, it was taken out of context, or the guy in the hat who decided to give off Fox News' top three and then dip because, you know, have a tendency of just leaving quickly as humanly possible. Case in point there. But it is amazing to me that Trump is still being considered. And that's the scary part. The scary part is he is still being considered in the eyes of many, not just the cult that pays his bills, not just the RNC who also pays his legal bills, but other people whose lives have honestly been, you know, degraded because of Trump are now considering to vote for him again. It's almost like, again, from a person who lives in the South, I will never understand people that can vote conservative because you're voting against your own interests. Conservatives love the rich and they love corporations. There's no love for anything else. And again, for a person that's been in Tennessee all his life and have seen conservatives literally get mad about the quality of life, but your city's legislature is conservative. Your state government is conservative. Your representatives, a good three out of the four are conservative. And yet you wonder why your state hasn't gotten any better. I'm just saying, look at all red states versus all blue states, and just check the level of productivity. I think you'll see a difference. But again, this just goes back to the fact that people are just, this is the whole thing of us needing to pay attention to what's going on. And that's why we need to be aware. That's why this election is so important. And that's why we need to vote, especially in the sense that as the next story goes, this is what I was talking about this entire time. And I have been saying it now for going on 2 years. The dangers of a conservative leaning Supreme Court, because that conservative leaning Supreme Court is compromised, because we've seen judges are bought and paid for. We've seen landmark cases either get shot down or partially gutted. We saw that with abortion. We saw that with affirmative action. We're about to see that with the Second Amendment just now, because now the Supreme Court is saying maybe bump stocks aren't so bad. Can't make it up.
It was the deadliest mass shooting in American history, unleashed near the Vegas Strip. A gunman killing 60 people at a concert, injuring hundreds more. His arsenal of weapons outfitted with bump stocks, prompting former President Trump to classify them as machine guns and ban them.
We've taken important steps, but much work remains to be done.
Today, the Supreme Court's conservative majority saying that ban went too far. Bump stocks allow semi-automatic rifles to fire more quickly, hundreds of rounds per minute, harnessing a gun's natural recoil to allow a user to bump the trigger faster. The justices wrestled with whether the devices fit the technical definition of a machine gun, something long banned under federal law, finding they do not in a divided 6-3 ruling today, with Justice Thomas writing, even with a bump stock, a semi-automatic rifle will fire only one shot for every function of the trigger. But Justice Sotomayor in dissent finding bump stocks functionally equivalent to a machine gun, writing, when I see a bird that walks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, I call that bird a duck. Some lawful gun owners like Jeremiah Cottle, who invented the bump stock, had argued the prior administration simply overstepped its authority.
The president doesn't get to make law that Congress does.
Tonight, the White House calling on Congress to ban the device.
What the court did today is really rolling back what otherwise is important progress to be made to prevent gun violence in America.
And Laura's here. We're still waiting on some more key rulings from this court.
Yes, Lester, there's still another major decision to come still on guns. And of course, the ruling about whether the former president is immune from prosecution for trying to overturn the last election.
So again, and I'm trying to be nice about this because I am a firearms owner. I don't see the need for bump stocks. I don't. Bump stocks, again, do increase the rate of fire on firearms. And I'll be the first person to say it. I never had a need for something. I'm sorry. I'm not currently in the military. I'm not overseas. I'm not in a war zone. I'm not defending my land against warlords or things of that nature. I live in a semi-safe neighborhood, I guess you can call here in Nashville semi-safe. The point I'm getting at is the current level of protection I have for myself is fine. I don't need something. I don't need my firearms to get to the point where I can shoot 100 or 200 rounds a minute. I don't. At the same time, why do you? Because, again, if you have enough guns, and some people do have armories, no disrespect, you don't need something that basically is set for military purposes. You don't. No matter how they try to argue this, bump stocks don't make semi-automatics faster. Yes, they do. Hence the bump. It's literally designed for that. And only those of the ammosexuals, because that's what I usually call those that, have a little bit of too much of an obsession with guns. Ammosexuals will always argue that bump stocks are harmless. Yet at the same time, they don't want to do anything more about the gun violence that's going on in America. But you want to have the ability to have your semi-automatic have all the options available to you. Because one day you think that the government's going to come for your guns. One day you think the government is basically going to do a tyrannical oversight on us, and that you believe that you need to be the patriot that you believe in your imagination, which will never come to life, by the way. But you feel like you need this weapon. You don't. And it's amazing to me that the Supreme Court, again, conservative leaning, 6-3. How many conservatives are there on the Supreme Court? How many liberals and progressives are on the Supreme Court? I'll let you figure that out. But 6-3 have just overruled that bump stocks are not illegal. So you know what that means? Sales are going to go up. At the same time, I just wish that, let's be honest, you give guns more protections than you do give kids in our country. Just be honest. I mean, outside of kids and law enforcement, guns have the most protection I have ever seen outside of those two things and animals. I just want you to be honest because you don't care. But speaking of things that don't care, because whenever it comes to religion and things of that nature, I'm scared because everybody, there are some out there that believe that we're founded on a Christian nation. We're not. We've never been founded on religion. Religion was the main reason why we left a certain country, because we wanted to basically have our own freedoms. That being said, I never thought in this day and age, especially on Juneteenth, that we had to worry about the 10 Commandments being placed anywhere in a school. Because again, we have church and state for a reason, but apparently some state thought, we need to have them there.
Louisiana, as of tonight, is now the first state to require the 10 Commandments to be displayed in every public school classroom in the state after the governor signed this controversial bill into law. And it gets pretty specific, saying the commandments have to be on a poster-sized display with font that's easy to read. The governor seems to be spoiling for the legal fight here, and it looks like he will get it, with a bunch of civil liberties groups, including the ACLU, saying in just the last couple of hours, wait a second, this is not constitutional, and that they're planning to sue. Vaughn Hilliard is joining us now with more.
Right, Hallie. Look, we have seen some of these conservative states go and challenge what has previously been decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. In this situation, back in 1980, the U.S. Supreme Court, they ruled against a Kentucky measure that would have required public classrooms to have the 10 Commandments inside of the classrooms. And yet 45 years have passed. It is a different Supreme Court with a conservative lean to it. And the conservative legislature and Republican Governor Landry, who signed this measure into law, made the conscious decision that they're going to go and try to challenge that. Now, the ACLU, to note, and other organizations have already indicated that they intend to file a lawsuit in which they say, in part, quote, the law violates the separation of church and state and is blatantly unconstitutional. Politicians have no business imposing their preferred religious doctrine on students and families in public schools. So we've seen other Republican states consider this type of measure here, but they haven't gone forward with it, knowing that it would face a legal lawsuit. But for now, in the state of Louisiana, these public classrooms from kindergarten all the way through universities are going to be required to have a poster-size version of the 10 Commandments posted inside of these classrooms.
That's nuts. That's nuts. Why the 10 Commandments? Why? I've never understood this. And again, I'm an elder's kid, so I'm all familiar with that, with those 1 through 10 commandments. Although, you know, Dorito isn't. It's always funny when he always asks about, you know, the 10 Commandments and trying to quote a favorite Bible verse. But I digress. The whole idea of separation of church and state is to basically put a wall between the two. The fact that you have those who believe that they should impose their religious beliefs on public schools now in Louisiana are now about to deal with it. Now, of course, this will be argued. This will be sued in the courts because, again, why do we need the 10 Commandments? I always feel like I always say, well, you know, we was okay when Jesus was in school. Jesus was never in school. We had prayer in school. Prayer is still in school. It's what we call a moment of silence. Moment of silence can do whatever the crap you want to do, you know. And it's almost like they were pledging your allegiance to the flag. I stopped doing that in 5th grade because I realized as a 5th grader, what am I pledging my allegiance to? I don't even really take into consideration the words to be an American in 5th grade. So with that also being said, why do we have the need of thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal? Of course, it'd be really funny that you got to explain that in grade school. What does that mean that thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife? Good luck to you, and poor teachers. And again, teachers who are underpaid, underwhelmed, stressed out, now have to deal with the fact that, you know, it possibly religious items, especially the 10 Commandments, because trust me, they're trying to put the Bible in the school library. And I think it's kind of funny for all their banned books talking about sexualization and witchcraft and all this stuff. And I'm like, how is the Bible not on the banned list in the school library? But again, I digress. We'll follow that. But want to move on to business for a side because the Boeing CEO has come forward, being called to Congress, to explain about the fact of what's going on with the aircraft there. Because keep in mind, it's not like Boeing doesn't have a history of retaliating against whistleblowers, although people do come up missing. But I digress. Here's the video.
Boeing CEO grilled for the first time since that door plug blew off the plane at 16,000 feet. Passengers right in that row. Gio Benitez covers aviation.
Tonight, Boeing CEO under fire on Capitol Hill. Dave Calhoun in the hot seat for the first time since that door plug flew off a Boeing 737 MAX 9 at 16,000 feet, grilled on the company's safety record.
You're cutting corners. You are eliminating safety procedures. You are sticking it to your employees. You are cutting back jobs because you're trying to squeeze every piece of profit you can.
I don't recognize any of the Boeing you described.
Really?
And I want to assure...
You don't recognize the Boeing that has airplanes falling out of the sky, that has had 2 Maxes crash, that has had pieces of doors fall out of the sky?
This as a new whistleblower comes forward. Sam Mohawk, a Boeing quality assurance investigator, alleging faulty parts that are not up to standard are being installed in new planes, warning it could lead to a catastrophic event. Boeing and Calhoun himself say they are reviewing the claims and that they encourage employees to report all concerns. But when asked if he has personally spoken with any of the whistleblowers,
I have not directly spoken to any of the whistleblowers.
You think that'd be a good idea to do that?
Yeah, I think it would.
Calhoun first took over the company in a moment of crisis following the tragic crashes of 737 MAX planes in 2018 and 2019 that killed 346 people in Ethiopia and Indonesia. Calhoun at one point turning to the families, apologizing and promising change.
I want you to know we are totally committed to your members to work and focus on safety.
And David, the DOJ is exploring whether to criminally prosecute Boeing over those MAX crashes, and Calhoun has already said he plans to leave the company at the end of the year. David.
Well, that's usually the typical way of how most CEOs handle things. That, yes, to avoid prosecution, I will take my golden parachute and bounce. Seems to be the way for most CEOs. But no, it never ceases to amaze me because, again, if you watched last week's night with John Oliver, he covered the Boeing planes. He covered the fact that those that work for Boeing have sat there and stressed serious safety issues because they basically put profit over protection. They basically put profit over proper assembly. They put profit over everything, and now we're seeing it. So yes, the Boeing CEO can come up to Congress and sit there and say, well, I don't recognize it. Or, I apologize profusely. That should never happen. Will you talk to the whistleblowers? I'm just saying, if you're a whistleblower for Boeing, you are definitely going in to win this protection. I'm just saying, because the amazing CEO is like, yeah, I think I should talk to them. No, you shouldn't. Because what's there to talk about? Your company is full of holes, and so are your planes. And at the same time, you're going to leave the company, which tells me what a wonderful way to avoid prosecution, because the U.S. is the only country to where a corporation, a bank, and a politician at this rate can escape prosecution. Any other country out there would immediately get tagged. They would jail bankers. They would jail CEOs. They would put politicians in jail. But in America, hey, we'll let you slide with a golden parachute. No harm, no foul. But again, this is the problem with corporations and things of that nature. They do their dance in front of Congress. The CEO leaves with a nice little golden parachute. At the same time, another CEO gets installed, and it's almost like washing your hands clean. We start again. Boeing is a good company until the next disaster. All I'm saying is eventually somebody has to be held accountable. That's all I'm saying. But speaking of accountable, I again, going back to Biden for a second, Biden is looking for a way to reach out to people. And all I can sit there and say is this governor of Maryland, Mr. Wes Moore, has done something that, I think is a wonderful step in the right direction that I wish the president would do. But I personally believe in this day and age, Biden wouldn't do it.
Today, Maryland Governor Wes Moore is announcing a mass pardon for more than 175,000 marijuana convictions. It's expected to apply to anyone convicted in the state of misdemeanor marijuana possession charges. Moore told the Washington Post it's a step to heal decades of social and economic injustice that disproportionately harms communities of color.
When it comes to cannabis, rolling out one of the best and most equitable legal markets in the country is incredibly important. But that rollout must go hand in hand with pardoning past conduct, and Maryland is going to lead by example.
Amazing. He sat there and said in less than 40 seconds what the president could honestly be campaigning on right now. And I've said before, it's like if the president wants to connect with individuals, I said it before, raise the minimum wage. It's 2024. Let's get above the $7. If anything, minimum wage should really be in the area of $28 to $35 an hour, if we're really being honest. Number two, make marijuana legal in all 50 states, including pardoning marijuana convictions and expunging those with those criminal. If your crime involves weed, just weed, nothing else, it should be expunged. Matter of fact, it should be legal. Treat it the same way we treated prohibition so long ago. When cigarettes and hooch wasn't alcohol, wasn't liquor, hooch. When hooch was taxed, you had to go to speakeasies to get it. But what do? We taxed it and we legalized it and made plenty of money. Still making plenty of money off of that. Moonshine, same way. Everybody thought moonshine was legal. No. Moonshine is legal. It's the fact of selling it without taxes is illegal. And then what happened? People taxed it. Now you have like 40 different things of moonshine sitting out there for the world to see. So marijuana, some states, 19 states have figured it out. Let's legalize marijuana. And what has happened? Economic booms have happened across those, I want to say 18, 19 states. The same thing will happen in Maryland, except now 175,000 marijuana convictions will be pardoned. Some people's records will be expunged. At the same time, the governor is seeing the writing on the wall. And what I mean by that is, guys, it's high. I know it's a terrible word. It's high time it should happen, but it should. I think marijuana does not harm. It doesn't harm, although I don't smoke it or ingest it or, however you choose to take it. I don't. I know I have some friends that partake, and again, good for them. It has multiple applications along with the plant, not just the medicinal, but also the mechanical. That being said, how are we not exploring this is my question. Because Amsterdam got it figured out, and they've been doing it for decades. Just saying, look to see what's going on. But it goes back to what I said. The president won't do it because, again, for reasons beyond my comprehension, he will come up with some bullshit excuse. But I just don't understand it. I mean, just say, I want to legalize marijuana. Instant voter turnout. Because you certainly won't see the GOP doing it. But I digress. But speaking of Biden, again, guys, and this is why I say this part bothers me, where he talks about ending the Trump's tax cuts. For all those that don't know, the Trump's tax cuts don't expire until 2025, which means that for Biden's first term as president, he has been dealing with those Trump's tax cuts, which again, if you're wealthy or a corporation, you've enjoyed it. If you're middle and lower class, certain bonuses and additions were taken away from you to give to the rich. However, this is the problem that bothers me. Biden is now trying to make sure those tax cuts end next year. However, the GOP is wanting to make sure those tax cuts continue, along with Trump. This is the problem that I also have with Biden, is that why is it? And I asked this question, and all those, if you're watching this podcast or listening to it, please let me know, because I scratch my head on this all the time. Biden on day one could have turned around and sat there and said, you know what? I'm doing an executive order to end Trump's tax cuts. I am trying to figure out why that never occurred, because the tax cuts were put back in 2017, which now, until then, we're stuck with this for another year, and yet keeping them adds $4 trillion in debt to the national deficit that we have. $4 trillion. Again, Trump is one thing he's done as president as a first. He's the first president to double what we owe. So if anything, he's the first in that. But it amazes me so that how is it that now Biden, again, I'm just going to throw this out there, why wasn't this one of your go-tos when your first 100 days of president? Why wasn't this done? Because I can only think now, because again, it's election season and you're trying to get votes anywhere. This is the problem I have with this. But again, this has been the Democrats' problem. And I'm going to get to the Democrats' problem because I got a bone to pick with Madam Vice President Kamala Harris too. But I do want to get to the fact that, of course, the two biggest, how can I put this over so nicely so I don't get banned? The two biggest troglodytes in the vice presidential race to be right beside Dorito have, came out and again pledged their allegiance. Except I wonder about, America's favorite Uncle Tim Scott, who has sat there and said he stands by his decision in the 2020 victory for Joe Biden. He stands by his decision. Keep in mind, we just showed, I want to say 2 weeks ago, we showed a video where Tim Scott was asked, would you certify the election regardless of who wins? he wouldn't answer. He would sit there and say, "Oh, you're just trying to get me discredit." Regardless of who wins, will you certify the election? And it's amazing that now, when it comes to the 2024 presidential election, he certainly would. In his words, he would certify that President Trump will have won the 2024 presidential election, which goes to show you off the bat how. I'm sorry, let me quote that directly. He says, "I will stand by the decision and the next decision to certify the fact that Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States." It is amazing to me that he might as well just get on both knees, pucker up, and figure out which cheek he wants to kiss first before going for the taint area, if you will. But he's not the only one. Representative Byron Donalds, who again has a little bit of a history problem when it comes to the fact that Black people have stuck together and done well under Jim Crow, is now on a one-man campaign for the Supreme Court to hear out Massa.
Republican Congressman Byron Donalds of Florida. Congressman Donalds, welcome back to Meet the Press. Happy Father's Day.
Oh, thank you so much. Happy Father's Day to everybody out there.
Thanks, Congressman. This weekend, Donald Trump again railed, as you saw, against his guilty verdict handed down by that Manhattan jury last month. He has said he's going to appeal the verdict. He has also asked House Speaker Mike Johnson to overturn his conviction. Why should Congress intervene on Donald Trump's behalf rather than letting the judicial process play out?
Well, look, first of all, it's good to be with you. One very important thing, it's not about Speaker Johnson. He doesn't have that power to overturn anything. But what it's about is that Congress does fund a lot of jurisdictions around the country. And if there is a jurisdiction that takes federal money and it does not also protect the constitutional rights of all Americans, whether that's President Trump or any other American, they shouldn't receive federal funds. I think that's something that every American would agree with. And you do have to understand President Trump's frustration. What happened in Lower Manhattan was a violation of his constitutional rights. They didn't even identify the crime, quote unquote, until the very end of the process, which is a violation of constitutional norms. Judge Merchan did not do that. And so, yes, he's frustrated. Any American would be frustrated.
And Congressman, to be clear, this was obviously a state case. He was indicted by a grand jury of New Yorkers. It was a jury of his peers in New York that found him guilty. The president, former president, has called himself a political prisoner, but of course, he had legal representation. He has the right to appeal. He's neither been detained nor imprisoned. So why not just let the judicial process play out?
Well, let's go back before you go down that line. In the original indictment, they never identified an underlying crime. Under our Bill of Rights, under our rule of law, a defendant is entitled to know what he's being charged with. Donald Trump was never afforded that ability. So how can his legal team prepare a defense if you don't even know what the actual crime is? That is why what happened in Lower Manhattan was so terrible. And the only time the prosecution could even assert a crime was at the end of the case, in closing arguments. You're not allowed to do that. And sir, every judge knows this. This is why everybody believes this is going to be overturned on appeal, but
so let me ask you about
interfere
that. So let me ask you about
the presidential election. That is the problem.
If it is overturned, I apologize for the satellite delay. If it is overturned on appeal, will you accept that verdict?
Well, understand what I'm trying to explain to you. This is being done for political purposes. Everybody knows how the court system works in New York.
But will you accept the verdict if it's
only
appealed,
ability for this to be overturned is going to be happening 2 or 3 years from now. We all know this. That's why what happened in Lower Manhattan was to interfere with an election, which is why Speaker Johnson, myself included, and many Americans believe the Supreme Court should step into this matter.
And to be clear, Joe Biden, there is no evidence that he had anything to do with this case. The Manhattan DA, as you know, began this investigation in 2018 before Joe Biden was even his party's nominee. I want to ask you about specifically what we've been hearing from Republicans and from Donald Trump, claiming the Democrats are illegally weaponizing the Justice Department against Mr. Trump. Why is it appropriate for Donald Trump then to call for prosecuting his political opponents, including President Biden?
Well, let me also explain this one. Now, what he did say is that we have always had this kind of a gentleman's agreement that you do not go after the political leaders of the opposition party. When Donald Trump was president, He didn't have his attorney generals go after Hillary Clinton when she did violate the Espionage Act. He did not give that order. They did not go and prosecute Hillary Clinton. But now you have a situation where Main Justice has weaponized the Justice Department to go after Donald Trump. You have Jack Smith, who's chasing down Donald Trump on violating the Espionage Act. But at the same time, Robert Hur knows that President Biden has violated the Espionage Act. Robert Hur is not prosecuting Joe Biden. Jack Smith is trying to prosecute Donald Trump.
Let me interrupt briefly, though. The
It's very plain to see.
The Biden Justice Department obviously is also prosecuting Democrats. Robert Menendez of New Jersey, Henry Cuellar of Texas right now. They just prosecuted Hunter Biden as well. So is it only weaponization when it is Republicans that are being prosecuted?
That's not true, and that's not even the same thing we're talking about here. What you got to understand
they prosecuted both Democrats and Republicans. So I think Americans would say, isn't that equal
gold
justice?
bars with his name engraved on them from a foreign country. So that's what Bob Menendez's situation is. Henry Cuellar's situation just got into investigation. But it is without a doubt that these legal cases were all brought in the middle of a presidential election for one purpose, and that is to criminalize Donald Trump, that is to polarize Donald Trump, that is to persecute Donald Trump. That's the only reason why you even bring these cases in the time frame that they're being brought.
And again,
in the words of Professor Cornel West, brother, how much are they paying you? Because my God, I have not seen a person go that hard for a white man since Django. But it is amazing that, again, to all people, and this is the one thing, if I was going to say anything to the anchors, to the journalists of ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, the Young Turks, all those that interview Congress people, I just want one thing to be done. Just one. I think it'll solve a whole lot of problems. To the person that's in your control booth that holds the mute button for the politician, when they say a lie or when they're about to bullshit, mute them. Mute them and instantly fact check them. That's all I want. Because what Byron Donald has just done, besides show himself to be the biggest sellout next to Tim Scott, and Tim Scott's a tall order, but it's amazing. He just threw in a lot of word salad. Oh, they're trying to criminalize Trump. They're trying to go after President Trump. Brother, you are trying so hard to be vice president that you are liable to put yourself out in clown shoes and do the makeup if it means you get the nod. Because again, Hillary Clinton violated the Espionage Act. Really, the woman that was literally being investigated in a hearing that went on 11 plus hours, and she didn't blink. Hillary Clinton, a woman that was literally being investigated in a congressional hearing for almost over 8 hours. I think it was like 9 or 11 hours, 9 to 10 hours, give or take. But think about that. Have you ever been in a congressional hearing where you couldn't leave for the better part of a day? And that woman didn't blink. Trump couldn't stand in one congressional hearing for 30 minutes without complaining that it's boring. And yet he's saying she violated the Espionage Act, which, by the way, she didn't. He also talks about the fact that, when the anchor brings up the fact that Democrats are not being specific to Republicans, they're actually investigating their own. He's had little to say about that. But he'll say weaponizing because Fox News says weaponizing. He'll sit there and say that's a Biden agenda because Fox News says it's a Biden agenda. Do you understand? Like I said, this is why I say Fox News is like a state propaganda network. They repeat certain phrases. They repeat certain terms. They repeat the lie until it becomes accepted. And that's what they're doing here, especially in the case of Mr. Donalds, who already is in hot water because of what he said. Keep in mind, it's what he said that should be quite alarming. And at the same time, he's doing it to make sure, hey, I'm the black person you need, Donald Trump. Where's my black friend? There's my black friend. That's the point. At the same time, guys, I want to cover this too because Kamala Harris, Madam Vice President, I want to give her due respect. Madam Vice President Kamala Harris was at the Black Men of America conference in Atlanta, Georgia. And here's the thing. This is what I sit there and say. I was one of the ones, and still am one of the ones, that when it comes to Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, it's hard to know what she's done because she's not out there really saying this is all that we've done. It's kind of hard because for the woman, again, a Black woman who is a first vice president in American history, that we need to know her accomplishments, doesn't say a lot. At the same time, she does it. I mean, when she does speak, it's only on certain things. But again, in an election season, you think her and the Democrats, not just her, every Democrat out there should be saying this from Jump Street, what they have done this congressional term for the American people, all the pluses they have done. They should be using that as a victory lap. At the same doggone time, they should be explaining everything the GOP has done, which is nothing. But that's what Democrats would do. But unfortunately, Democrats are effing cowards, spineless sometimes. And the reason why I say this is because America's favorite Sambo, Steve Harvey, decides that he has the ability to be he's the moderator in this video I'm about to play. And instead of him really pushing forth to sit there and say the Democrats should be explaining to Black people what has been done for them, what has been done for the country, how they can help push it forward, what the GOP has not done. They should be sitting here. And of course, for a man that's, campaigned for Obama, that campaigned for Obama twice, actually, you think with the first Black Madam Vice President right there, it's time to play journalism. It's time to do journalism. It's time to push hard questions. Nope. Look what this fool said.
That's a nice exchange. Look, I've been reading this paper because I got to stay I got a headache trying to stay on course. So just let me go off this paper for a minute. Before y'all start calling my radio show and DMing me, talking about why you ain't asked so hard-hitting questions, that ain't what this is. I'm throwing a lob. This is the Hollywood for a dunk. Because this administration needs to get the word out of what they're actually doing and what they're actually accomplishing, so we can stop all this foolishness about what you're doing for Black people. Can't nobody come out with no agenda and call it just for Black people and expect to get in the White House. You got to play the game different. Y'all know what this is. So now this next question is another lob for her to dunk. Because they've done a lot, man. But we see, I'm on this radio show, I'm hearing all these people talking about, I'm not voting if they're not doing nothing for us. Listen to me. If you do not vote, the analytics will show. They know how many women vote, they know the age you are when you vote. If we don't vote, how are we going to ask for something next time? If you ain't got no voting power, you talk about reparations. Ain't nobody finna give you no reparation and you don't vote. Well, you think they could give us some money? No, man. I hope they do. They owe us. I'll go down there. I'm sorry. I know I ain't coming back next year. Appreciate y'all having me. Madam Vice President, this is another part of this conversation because it affects us all. It's about housing. And another thing that you've been involved in over the years has been about housing. And it remains a priority for families all across the country. So talk more about the work that's being done to address the obstacles that's being presented in front of all of us as we try to gain housing.
So you're right, Steve. I mean, back when I was Attorney General of California, I sued the 5 biggest banks of the country during the foreclosure crisis. And you'll remember that a lot of Black families were targeted with those promises of these loans, zero payment down, and people ended up going bankrupt. So this is something I focused on for a long time. And here again, let's look at it through the context of obstacles and opportunities. So home ownership is probably one of the most effective and efficient and fastest ways to grow intergenerational wealth. Just think about it in this context. You own a home, and then your child says, you know, Daddy, I want to go to Howard University. Yes. And you can say to your child, honey, you don't have to take out some loans to do that. I'll take some equity out of the house. Or let's say your daughter says, I want to start a small business. And you can say to your child, honey, you don't have to take out a loan. I will take some equity out of the house to give you some startup capital. Intergenerational wealth. Okay, but that's a fact. Now let's talk about other facts. Let's talk about, we don't even need to go as far back as 40 acres and a mule never happened. Let's go to the GI Bill. You know, we just celebrated D-Day. So remember, we call them the greatest generation, those mostly men who went to war and put America on the map as a leader around global peace and security. So the United States government, in essence, said, the people said, you are the greatest generation, you sacrificed so much. We owe you, and we believe in you. And there were policies then to boost their standing through loans, specific grants given to them to buy homes. So here was this incredible boost. Here's the reality. Black servicemen, because of what we know to be racial bias and racism in the system, did not receive those loans at the same rate. So where you saw public policy that was about a boost, right? We had disparities before that happened. And then you see the disparities grow even more. Take into account segregation, redlining, urban renewal, where in so many black cities in particular, they would build freeways straight through the neighborhood, which would cut the business community, commerce off from the neighborhoods. Over and over again, we have seen these inflection points in the history of our country that have set folks back around homeownership. So one thing that we have to do is speak truth about that. And the second piece of it then is, what are we going to do to accommodate the fact that we have far too many folks who, for example, in black families, there's no history in their immediate family of homeownership. What are we doing to give them a boost? So we are proposing a policy, which we are on track to getting done, so that if you are the first generation in your family to go for home ownership, you'll get $25,000 credit for down payment. And if you are first in your family generationally, first time home ownership, qualify for $400 a month in credits to go toward paying your mortgage. So these are some of the issues that we are seeking to address. There's another issue. Home appraisals. Again.
So I'm going to stop it right there, because look, I'm as respectfully as I can be. Here's the problem with Democrats. Outside of getting Sambo Steve Harvey to sit there and say, I'm not going to ask the hard questions, I am not going to press Madam Vice President on why certain things are not getting done. But you're going to sit there and say, well, there is some things that are being done. And she gives, and again, with all due respect to Madam Vice President, you gave a long-winded ass historical story just to sit there and say that your policy for home ownerships, for first-generation home ownership, with incentive to also help pay, is somehow moving along. I'm going to point this out. This would have been a great thing if you had started from day one. You've been in the office for you've been in the office for your first term, nearly 4 years. Your first tour of duty is almost up. And now you're saying, well, we have this policy in place for home ownership that is moving quite along, that this is the first we've heard of it. Or correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first I've heard of this, to where she wants to move forward with home equity, that she's trying to make sure that redlining doesn't happen, that appraisal snubs don't happen. Because we talked about that appraisal snub she's talking about, where a black family was given a much lower appraisal rate than asking their white friend to come in there and pose the homeowner, and the rate that he gotten was several times more than what the black couple who actually owned the house got. So this is the problem I have with Democrats. This is the problem. It just seems like you guys are spineless when it comes to toting what you've done. If you've done positive things, do positive things. Say this. Say for the 4 years that we sent you to the White House, say this is what you've done. This is what you accomplished. Ride that out. But this is the reason why a lot of disenfranchised voters, whenever it comes to election season, don't really get excited about when you guys say, oh, we're doing this and we're doing this and we're doing this. Oh, we're going to help you guys with the housing problem. We're going to help you guys on the wages problem. We're going to help you guys on paid maternity leave. We're going to help you guys on this. You say these things in an election season. Imagine what would happen if you said it in a non-election year. The emphasis it would have. Because, again, Democrats and Republicans are trying to curry black people for voting. And I'm sorry, as much as I respect Madam Vice President, this lob that you were given by Sambo Steve Harvey does nothing in the fact that all you're talking about is that policies are in place. But you're not saying, and of course, you can listen to the entire 40-minute interview that's available on YouTube right now. And it is inspiring. But she hasn't said anything that says, you know what? This is what we've done. It's like middle of the road moderate Democrats. Moderate Democrats are Republican light. Just enough to be not enough to be fully conservative, but just enough to be considered just a drop in the bucket to be considered progressive. And this is the problem I have with Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. It's the problem I have with current President Joe Biden. It's the problem I have with the Democrats as a whole. Why is it that you guys are not out there showing your accomplishments and not waiting till election year to fight back against a GOP who has done nothing but 4 years, is criticize, point the finger at you, and keep repeating the same BS lies for 4 years, to the point that now they've got enough people to convince them to give them another shot. It's how they got the House in the first place. I don't understand it. Whereas Trump goes to a black church. Trump goes to a black church. And here's the funny thing about that black church. That black church, 180 Church in Detroit, mostly full of white people. And again, I'm just going to play a little bit. Of course, this is from Roland Martin. Roland Martin Unfiltered. Definitely check him out on YouTube. But he covers this in a way that actually makes a lot more sense than what I could say.
If you're gonna sit here and damn, really? What we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Y'all, come on. It's 15 damn people. He literally had 15 people. I wonder how many of them are paid actors, because y'all know Trump pays for people to come to their rallies. Okay. But these fools are sitting here. Just press play. If y'all want to see some, look at this silly ass. Look at this. That's it. That's it. That's it. They found 15 of them. Stop right there. Here's my other deal. I don't know who these two Negroes are, but you cannot be a real black person and have your Bama ass wearing a hat in the pulpit. I don't know who these two Bamas right here are, but they need their ass whooped. Okay, all right. So let's okay. So Donald Trump sat here and he goes to this, and of course, all the conservative media covering this, Newsmax, they all covering it. They all sitting in Newsmax, Fox News, they all making a big deal out of it. So let's just go ahead and start the lying. Press play.
It's an honor to be here. It's a very important area for us. We've done more for, and I say this, I say it proudly, more for the black population than any president since Abraham Lincoln. That's a big step.
I start right there, y'all. I done heard some silly ass comments before. That man right there has got to be on meth. You ain't done more for black people than LBJ did. You ain't done more for black people than Bill Clinton did. You ain't done more for black people than Truman and FDR did. His punk ass actually said, matter of fact, Ida B. Wells was sitting there campaigning for Herbert Hoover. This fool actually, a straight ass lie. Now y'all notice he says that he ain't never following that up with any facts whatsoever. And them 12 Negroes, yes, Donald. Yes, Donald. Yes, Donald. You're our man, Donald. Lying ass. Go ahead and roll it.
And crooked Joe Biden has done nothing for you except talk. It's only talk. It's all talk. He gets nothing. He gets nothing for anyone. He was lost. He's in Europe. He's walking around. He doesn't know where the hell he is. And he's supposed to help Detroit. I don't think so. But we received the lowest African.
Hold up, boy, we play that lie. Let me remind y'all, Donald Trump opposed the auto bailout. It was Obama and Biden that made sure that the auto industry got bailed out. The reason there is an auto industry today is because of Obama and Biden after what took place with the housing foreclosure crisis in 2008 when the economy went in a massive tailspin. But of course, that fool would never tell you that. Oh, all that investment in Detroit all came after that as well. And so none of that stuff happens without the investment in Detroit by Obama, Biden. Those are called facts. Clearly, none of these fools knew anything about these facts. Listen to this lie.
American unemployment rate and the lowest African American poverty rate ever recorded. Ever recorded.
Stop.
In my 4 years.
Stop right there. See, whenever you start using the word ever, that means that, ever, meaning before you and after you. But the fact of the matter is, that is an absolute lie that Donald Trump. The black unemployment rate in November 2020 was 10.3%. In December 2020, it was 9.9%. In January 2021, it was 9.2%, the highest of any group other than teenagers. The source, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. When Donald Trump talks about black unemployment, the black unemployment rate under Trump was 5.3% in August of 2019. Oh, the lowest ever? That was in April under Biden-Harris. Under Biden-Harris, the low, it was 4.7%. Okay, just in case some of y'all ain't good with math, 4.7% is lower than 5.3%. So you can't say it was the lowest ever under you because that's a flat out lie. I'm just simply saying. Also, Trump is also lying about the black poverty rate. The black poverty rate, lowest ever recorded since 1959, was 17.1%. When? August 2022. Who was in office? Biden-Harris. So again, right there, he lied again. Roll it.
We live lifted 6.6 million people out of poverty. Black Americans saw their largest increase in home ownership on record. There's never been anything like it.
Stop.
During our period of time.
Stop. Flat out lie. Flat out lie. The highest period of black home ownership took place under President Bill Clinton, not under Donald Trump. I don't know what the hell he's talking about, but that's just a flat out lie. And so again, this is what happens when you sit there, and just make stuff up. And so that's what he does. He's sitting there and just making the stuff up, just sitting here and just, let me just go ahead and, just make it up. And so, in fact, here's the whole deal, y'all. Let's see. African Americans also have increased their black home ownership as of February 2024. And let's see here. Let me pull information up. Let's see here. Okay. Black home ownership rate, February 2024 was 44.1%. So Trump is just sitting here, y'all. He's just sitting here lying. He's just lying. But again, though, that's what happens when you sit here and just, make it up because he goes. And so here's it right here. So black home ownership increased during the pandemic. But what happened was you saw, of course, that particular change. And so the numbers went up to, let's see right here, the black home ownership rate increased 2 percentage points. Let me see if I can pull this up for y'all. Give me 1 second. The black home ownership rate increased from 42.2% to 44.2%. Now, and today it's lower than it was in 2000. Again, let me say it again. In 2000, the black home ownership rate was 45.7%. 45.7. That was higher than when Trump was president. He's lying. Press play.
We gave record funding to historically black colleges.
Stop. Oh, hell no. Now stop. Now we done debunked that damn lie repeatedly. You notice we gave record funding. He can never give a number. Congressman Byron Donalds can never give a number. Ben Carson can never give a number. They can never give a number because the number doesn't exist. $16 billion to HBCUs under Biden-Harris. It ain't even close to Trump. And it ain't even close to Obama. So Donald Trump is lying. That is the third or fourth lie this man has stated in this black church. Lord have mercy. I don't know what God these folks serve, but they trifle as hell. Press play.
You all know that. And got great support. And I will just tell you a quick story. The heads of the colleges would come to Washington once every year. And after 2 years, I said, why do you guys keep coming? And I liked them. I liked a couple of them. Really, they're friends of mine. But the whole group was very, they were just terrific people, men and women heading up the colleges. And I said, why do you keep coming? Because they won't give us long-term financing. We have to come back every year. One said, and I say respectfully, he said, they make us feel like a bunch of beggars. We have to come back to Washington every year. I said, well, we're going to take care of that. And I got them actually more money than they asked for by far. And we got them long-term financing. And I said, the only thing sad is that I'll never see you again, probably. I will never meet you again.
Phrase. See right there, just straight ass lying. First of all, everybody got to come to Congress every single year when it comes to appropriations to seek additional funding. And what he said there is an absolute lie. It's just a flat out lie. The program that he's talking about is a very specific program that he zeroed out of the budget. It was Congresswoman Alma Adams who had to put back in the budget. It was the work of Congressman Bobby Scott and the CBC that got that particular program passed as a $250 million program, and $91 million of that goes to HBCUs. HBCUs get way more money, billions from other programs. So y'all, he just straight ass lying. He's straight lying. So that's.
So I'm going to stop it right there just because, again, this is what I mean by actual journalism. Roland Martin gets it right that, stop it, fact check it. And yes, at this 180 church, in Detroit, Trump did his greatest hits. And yes, if you do see some signs about that church, there was more white folks than there was black folks in that church. And again, the pastor of that church did thank Donald Trump for showing up. Again, I'm not surprised by that. However, I'm really surprised that I did see an ad for ivermectin Z-Packs showing on that streaming site. So I thought that was interesting as well. But again, guys, this is what we're looking at. I implore Democrats, if you ever do watch this podcast, this is y'all's time to go on the offensive. The Republicans have been on the offensive this entire 4 years. It is about high time Democrats have sat there and said, fair enough, tables turn, and get to work. It's just that simple. Because if you don't, well, get ready to have Trump version 2. And Trump version 2 is going to be worse than the original. Way worse. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our Feel Good segment, guys. Usually on How the Frack We Got Here, we do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes make you lose your faith in humanity. But hey, it's Wednesday. It's hump day. Tomorrow is Friday Eve, which is Thursday. We will leave you guys out some good vibrations for Juneteenth. Talking about a woman who has made her home available to so many children is getting her roses.
Finally tonight, America Strong, the amazing foster mom changing lives for decades. For 88-year-old Emma Patterson, putting family first is a lifestyle, raising 4 children and 10 grandchildren. But over the decades, she's also opened her heart and her home in Montgomery County, Maryland, to nearly 40 foster children.
My birth children started bringing children home that the parents had more or less discarded. Some of the kids maybe didn't have coats or needed shoes. Some were just hungry. And my children would bring them home, and I would do the best I could.
Fostering as many as 9 kids at a time, some starting at birth.
They were born drug-addicted babies, and that they couldn't let them go home with their parents. They stayed with me all their lives.
And doing all of this as a single mom.
The majority of the children were able to stay with me until they became adults and were able to go out in the world and start their own businesses and go to college and just have a good life. Just be a good, decent human being that somebody wants them in our society.
Her generous spirit heavily influenced by her own grandmothers.
I saw both of my grandmothers always being generous, always helping somebody. That's what you're supposed to do.
After celebrating her last foster child's high school graduation, Emma is now retiring, recently honored by Montgomery County for her years of service to the children, offering support and love where it was needed most.
I cannot say that I have any regrets. This was something I just felt that I wanted to do, and I enjoyed doing every day. I felt good. It made me feel happy.
What an impact.
What an impact is right, considering the fact that this was a woman that raised 40 different foster kids on her own and all successful. Look, I keep on saying this about mothers. Don't get me wrong, fathers are important too, but again, it's amazing when you have somebody in your corner, the impact that you could have on children, because those lives could have went in severely different directions. But thank goodness that woman stepped in and actually became a very positive source for those kids. So again, you love to see it. But that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. Thank you all for liking, for watching, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. Some shameless plugging before I get out of here. Of course, you can find me, Black_Spartan615 on the socials. You can actually find the link to the podcast, How the Frack We Got Here. Of course, my other show, Get Bit Podcast. You can find the links there. The podcast can be seen and heard wherever podcasts you get them from, whether it's Spotify or Apple, Google Play or Apple Podcast, or pretty much everywhere. We try to be everywhere. And also at the same time, guys, again, we cannot do the support without you. A like, a share, and a follow costs nothing. And again, we cannot do this without you. And of course, the link at the bottom will make that a little bit bigger for you guys to see. If you copy and paste that link into your browser, take it to my link tree, of course, with the Facebook and YouTube groups for all the podcasts can be found there as well. Like, share, let people know about it. Also, guys, check out Blurred Station. I cannot keep talking about that. It is the vehicle that, again, as we all ask for, it is our Netflix, it is our Hulu, it is our Amazon Prime, to where you can find movies, television shows, comics, mangas, graphics, things of that nature, and all for $10.99 a month. If you do decide to join, guys, please select the Blurred's Eye View Affinity membership. Please select Black Spartan as the name, which is basically me. It definitely does pay the bills, and we certainly appreciate that. But at the same time, guys, it's $10.99 a month to view Blurred Station. After 36 months, guys, you do have the ability to own a piece of Blurred Station. Again, Can't beat that with a stick. At the same time, if you're a content creator and want to join Blur Station, you first have, or want to have your content on Blur Station, you do need to join Blur Station first. That'll give you the ability to talk with the people behind the curtain, and hopefully your content will be shown there. You get to keep ownership of your content. The only thing that Blur Station asks for is a piece of the distribution, and honestly, you can't beat a deal like that. That also being said, guys, again, with this election season coming up, guys, do the research. You know, we live in a very digital information age. You have a smartphone, you have internet. There's no reason why you're not informed. There's no reason why you're not checking out these candidates. There is no reason why you're not wanting to be able to vote. Because if voting wasn't important, they wouldn't be not trying so hard to take it away from you. So again, please be active. If you feel like running, there's plenty of sites out there that can show you how to run in your city or state if you do decide to run. And if you want to make a difference, be a civil servant. Nothing wrong with that. But the last thing I'll say about the Frack We Got Here, y'all, guys, is all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information, allow you to make up your own mind. But we do provide a lot of perspective that goes along with it. We do a lot better in society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first Black woman as a National Cybersecurity Director. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go about our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the Frack We Got Here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll all get through this. Peace.